Deep inside the forest, in a small, isolated house, a boy wakes up and begins his day. He walks around the place, testing out his water magic. Earlier, after dying in an accident, 20-year-old Rio Mihara had met an angel he named Michael. Michael explained that Rio had been chosen for reincarnation in another world. Wanting a slow, peaceful life, Rio gladly accepted. Michael told him his new world would be called Phi, where he could simply live as he pleased. He was granted water magic, a house in Rondo forest, 2 months' worth of food, and books containing basic knowledge, along with information about the monsters in the forest. Rio dedicated his days to training water magic. When he struggled to create fire, he used water magic to form a lens and relied on sunlight to ignite flames. The next day, he continued trying new spells. He knew his food wouldn't last forever, so he would eventually need to hunt. He studied the monsters around him, realizing he had to improve his magic enough to cast spells quickly before going out. After steady practice, he ventured into the forest, only to encounter a lesser boar. His fear froze him at first, but he managed to survive and eventually kill it. He later learned that dragons and demons also existed in this world. The following day, Rio returned to the forest and was attacked by an assassin hawk, which retreated after being injured by him. Later, while heading back, he saw a dullahan standing in the middle of the lake. As months passed, Rio improved greatly at water magic and faced increasingly dangerous monsters. He ended up fighting the dullahan every day. Despite losing each time, the dullahan never killed him. Rio realized it was training him, especially since it also used water magic and eventually gave him a water sword. The assassin hawk later returned in an evolved, stronger form to take revenge. Now completely black with far deadlier attacks, it challenged Rio again. Rio managed to kill it using the water sword, though he felt grateful to the hawk for helping him grow stronger. Shortly after, a red dragon appeared, searching for the evolved hawk. To its surprise, Rio could hear it speak. Impressed that Rio had defeated the hawk, the dragon introduced himself as Lune. He explained that the sword Rio carried belonged to the Fairy King, meaning Rio must have impressed him greatly. Rio used the chance to ask Lune many questions about the world before the dragon left. Meanwhile, in another realm, Michael was stunned to discover that Rio had reincarnated with a hidden ability, eternal youth. Rio eventually discovers a shipwreck along the coast and finds several bodies scattered around, but one young swordsman is still alive. He carries the man back to his house and treats his injuries. When the man wakes up and steps outside, he meets Rio and introduces himself as Abel. Seeing Rio's simple, ragged clothing, Abel assumes he is a forest hermit too poor to buy proper clothes. Rio tells him he was the only survivor, and Abel explains that the others were smugglers before thanking Rio for saving him. Rio offers him food and mentions he is a water magician, which surprises Abel. Abel then asks Rio to accompany him back to the beach to search for something he lost. On their way, Abel notices Rio doesn't carry a staff and assumes it is because he cannot afford one. Believing Rio lives in poverty, Abel decides he must protect him from the dangers of the forest. When they reach the beach and examine the remains of the ship, Abel realizes the item he was looking for is gone. He plans to reunite with his friends in Lune village of the Nightly Kingdom, but soon realizes he has drifted far down the coast, making his journey much longer. Abel invites Rio to travel with him, and Rio agrees to guide him but asks for time to prepare. That night, before leaving, Rio visits the dullahan to say goodbye. He thanks the dullahan for all the training and sparring and fights him one last time. As a parting gift, the dullahan gives him the robes of a water magician. The next day, Rio leaves the forest with Abel. Along the way, Abel demonstrates a combat technique used by people who cannot use magic. They spot lizard men, and later on, Rio realizes they are being followed. He defeats the group using his magic, and Abel finally understands that Rio's magic is far stronger than he assumed, though his use of incantations is inconsistent. Abel shows Rio the currency used in this world and explains the 3 major powers: the Nightly Kingdom, the Debuhi Empire, and the Handalyu Federation. Rio remarks that he will never visit Debuhi simply because he dislikes the name. Soon after, they are attacked by rock golems. Abel's attacks prove ineffective, so Rio wipes out the entire nest by dropping a massive ice block on them, collecting a magic stone afterward. Abel then tells him that this world holds even stranger creatures, dungeons, elves, dwarves, and more. He mentions the Lune has several dwarves but only one elf. The following day, as they near the mountains separating the wilds from human territory, Abel asks where Rio learned so much about the world. Rio explains that all the information came from beyond human because it was dragon Lune who told him everything. They then encounter a griffin, which fortunately leaves after they throw meat at it, though Abel is deeply shaken because griffins have not appeared for centuries. They soon encounter wyverns as well, but Rio dispatches them quickly, shocking Abel since it usually takes 20 adventurers to kill even one. While Rio keeps them grounded, Abel finishes them off. After collecting the materials and crossing the mountain range, they finally reach a wide open plain. After walking for some time, they finally spot a road. Abel explains that following it will lead them to a town. They eventually spend the night in Kailati, where Abel suggests that Rio should become an adventurer, and Rio is pleasantly surprised to discover that curry and rice exist in Phi. The next day, they reach Lune, where the town guard warmly welcomes Abel back and thanks Rio for saving him. Abel then brings Rio to the Adventurers Guild. He explains that with his personal endorsement, Rio can register directly as a D-rank adventurer and access better quests. Otherwise, he would have to start from the very bottom as an E or F rank. Inside the guild, Abel is immediately surrounded by grateful colleagues celebrating his safe return, so Rio quietly steps outside. An elf girl notices him and recognizes his water robe as something belonging to the Fairy King. She doesn't approach further but says she hopes they meet again. When Abel returns, he leads Rio to the reception desk, but the receptionist explains that Rio's strength still needs to be confirmed before registration can be finalized. They meet the guild master, Hugh, who is relieved that Abel returned unharmed. Hugh is stunned when he hears Rio hunted wyverns alone, something that would rank him above even Abel. Abel explains that Rio lived on the far side of the Malefic Mountains, where the strongest monsters appear, which shocks Hugh even further. Moments later, Abel's worried party members, Lynn, Rihaya, and Warren of the Crimson Sword, arrive. While Abel reunites with them, guild clerk Nina takes Rio for his registration. After a short interview and Abel's endorsement, Rio officially becomes an adventurer and receives a direct promotion to D rank. Nina issues his guild license and enrolls him in a beginner's adventuring class. Abel then accompanies Rio to cash in the monster materials he collected. Abel had planned to use the money to buy new clothes and a staff for Rio, but Rio tells him he actually fights with a sword and shows him the one he carries. Rio begins asking Abel several questions, and from their conversation, Rio starts suspecting that another Japanese person may have been reincarnated into Phi long before him, based on cultural overlaps. Later, everyone gathers to celebrate Abel's safe return. The next day, Rio is assigned lodging with adventurers Nils and Ito, and another beginner named Amon joins them shortly after. Meanwhile, Abel tells his party members about Rio and how he uses his magic. Lynn refuses to believe Abel's account, convinced that such feats are impossible. Rihaya worries about what could happen if someone as powerful as Rio ever sided with the Debuhi Empire. However, Abel dismisses the concern, pointing out Rio's strange and intense dislike for the name Debuhi, making such an alliance extremely unlikely. After completing the beginner's class, Rio and the other new adventurers are invited to explore the first floor of the Lune dungeon. Before they enter, the instructor explains that inside the dungeon, monsters are constantly born and that a massive wall was built around the area to keep everyone safe. Sometimes, when the monster population surges, a monster tidal wave occurs. Amon is extremely nervous, but he calms down after Rio helps him defeat his first monster. They collect the magic stone in return, and later Rio celebrates with Amon, Nils, and Ito. Rio is puzzled by the presence of monster ants on the first floor. Everyone is impressed that he's friends with Abel, who arrives and explains that ants occasionally dig tunnels that reach the upper levels. Soon after, other Crimson Sword members appear and escort Abel back to the guild. Lynn and Rihaya remain doubtful of Rio's abilities, but Abel assures them they will witness his strength eventually. Rio and Amon return to the dungeon, and after defeating several monsters, Rio notices that Amon's sword style resembles the Hume style, Abel's own fighting method. Rio advises him to build stamina if he wants to fully utilize the technique, mentioning that even Abel never skips training. During his free time, Rio begins visiting Lune's library to study alchemy. Before he can start reading one day, an eclipse suddenly darkens the sun, and Rio is dragged into an alternate dimension called the cloister. He is immediately attacked by an Akuma. Rio narrowly avoids a lethal strike, and the Akuma recognizes both his robe and sword as belonging to the Fairy King. She claims his power is too significant to ignore and declares he must be eliminated. After a brief but intense fight, Rio manages to drive her back using acid rain. As the eclipse ends and the cloister fades, the Akuma retreats, introduces herself as Leonore, and says she hasn't enjoyed a battle that much in years. Although Rio clearly dislikes the idea, she assures him he'll undoubtedly encounter her, or other Akuma, again. When Rio returns to the real world, He sees Amon, Nils, and Ito being bullied by older adventurers led by Dan. Rio beats all of them without hesitation and gives his friends a potion afterward. During the bath later, Ito heals Rio's injuries. Rio quietly reflects on the encounter, realizing he must learn more about the cloister, Leonore, the Akuma, and whatever plans they might be carrying out. Amon, Nils, and Ito explore the dungeon exactly as before, noticing goblin archers on the 5th floor, an odd sight since those little troublemakers shouldn't be anywhere near that level. They take care of them and head back. Meanwhile, Rio is busy overthinking how to defeat Leonore next time. He figures her insane speed must come from wind magic, but when he tries boosting his own speed with water magic, nothing happens except mild disappointment. At the library, Lynn's research leads her to the surprising conclusion that Rio's spells don't exist anywhere else. She then bumps into an elf named Sarah, freshly returned from the capital. Around the same time, Rio's friend reports the goblins to the guild, causing Nina to worry. Goblins shouldn't appear before the 10th floor. She informs Hugh, who immediately orders her to summon the Crimson Sword and the White Brigade. Later, Abel and his party reach Hugh's office and meet Phelps, the leader of the White Brigade. Hugh decides both groups must investigate the possibility of a great tidal bore, an explosive surge in monster numbers that could threaten Lune, especially since the dungeon entrance sits conveniently in the middle of the city. He also explains that the city lord and knights are already prepared. Rio decides to visit the north side of the library. Amon tells him that the section contains forbidden texts only B ranks can read, which, of course, makes Rio even more curious. He goes anyway to continue researching Akuma and runs into the elf he met earlier, now introducing herself properly as Sarah. Meanwhile, Abel, Phelps, and the assembled adventurers gather at the dungeon gate. Before entering, Abel asks Lynn to use her magic to check for monsters on the upper floors. The moment she does, they discover the tidal bore has already reached the 1st floor. Hugh immediately announces an emergency quest and mobilizes every adventurer and knight to defend the entrance. At the library, Sarah shows Rio some books after he, wisely, avoids mentioning Akuma and claims he's researching golem creation instead. Back at the dungeon, the tidal bore bursts out, unleashing goblins in overwhelming numbers. Everyone holds the line as Hugh warns Abel to prepare for bigger monsters. After a full day of fighting, the Crimson Sword and White Brigade finally engage the leading monsters. 3 goblin generals appear but are taken down, only for the Goblin King to show up right after. Both parties join forces, finishing it off with Abel's strike and the Lynn's magic that Lynn had been preparing the entire time to end the tidal bore. Phelps is impressed with Crimson Sword's abilities and teamwork. Rio returns to town and finds everyone celebrating, while Hugh buries himself in paperwork after the tidal bore and shuts down the dungeon for safety. At the tavern, Rio meets his friends and Abel. Abel's party soon arrives, and Lynn immediately asks Rio about his magic, which confirms he is using magic she could not find in books. She's stunned to learn he doesn't need incantations because he created his spells entirely on his own. Since the dungeon is closed, Rio's friends can't find work, so he hires Nils, Ito, and Amon to help him gather magic copper ore for his alchemy studies. He then notices some knights harassing citizens and casually sends them tumbling before Phelps arrives to deal with them. It's revealed that Phelps is the son of Alexis Heinlein, the former Royal Knight Commander. Later, Abel asks Rio to assist him with an investigation. While checking around town, they notice suspicious adventurers, and when Rio follows them, he is ambushed by attackers from Jaclair City. He defeats them easily, leaving Abel wondering who wants Rio dead. Meanwhile, the knights who tried to get revenge on Phelps are reduced to ashes by his subordinate, Shenna. Royal official Harold and Royal University representative Clive arrive to investigate the tidal bore. He refuses to open the dungeon, but when Clive keeps pushing, Hugh agrees, on the condition that the guild takes zero responsibility for whatever happens. When Rio heads to Abel's Inn for food, he meets a young woman who asks for directions to the guild. She then introduces herself as Natalie and delivers Abel a message from Professor Hilarion, requesting his support in Harold's investigation. Abel explains that the last time someone attempted this, an S-rank adventurer, they vanished. As Rio leaves, Lynn questions Natalie about Rio's magic. Despite coming from a prestigious family and being a water magician herself, Natalie has never heard of Rio's spells. Abel warns his friends that if they ever have to fight Rio, surrendering is the smartest option, but if they're in danger, they should never hesitate to rely on him. He also tells Natalie where to find Rio if she ever needs his help. With low-rank adventurers banned from entering the dungeon, the guild assigns them other tasks. Rio is puzzled to discover that the goblins killed during the tidal bore had unusually weak white magic crystals. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Abel finds nothing on the upper floors, so he leads Harold, Clive, and their teams down to floor 38. There, they discover a mysterious portal they name the Gate. The moment it's touched, everyone disappears instantly, shocking the mages on the surface who are tracking their progress. The group materializes in an unknown location, and Clive immediately assumes this must be the source of the tidal bore, already fantasizing about taking credit for the discovery. Before anyone can argue, his team spots strange creatures lurking nearby. Outside the dungeon, Natalie notices something even more alarming. Abel and the others have somehow ended up on floor 40, a place no adventurer has ever reached. Christopher from the College of Magic reports that his own teammates inside the dungeon were also teleported, meaning the gate transported everyone inside the dungeon, regardless of their floor. Realizing the danger, Natalie remembers Abel's warning and runs to find help. Nina alerts you about the disappearance, and he instructs her to keep it quiet until he can confirm things himself. Rio, unaware of any of this, meets Sarah in the library. Their discussion reveals that tidal bores always occur after solar eclipses, and Sarah explains that monster crystals darken as they age. The fact that the tidal bore goblins had white crystals means they were only a few days old. Meanwhile, on floor 40, the group realizes they've been forcefully teleported somewhere else entirely. Their instruments work normally, but Harold and Rihaya confirm that they are sealed inside a massive magic barrier, making outside contact impossible. Lynn uses her detection magic and senses the presence of others, along with 50 unfamiliar life forms. Hugh and Christopher decide they cannot send a rescue team, as anyone entering would either be teleported as well or die before reaching floor 40. Those 50 unknown signatures soon reveal themselves as devils, who immediately massacre anyone in their path. Abel's group arrives and engages them. Their attacks land, but the devils' overwhelming numbers quickly drain the mages' mana. Abel takes command and forms a defensive line, allowing them to cut down the devils one by one until their leader emerges, a demon prince who has yet to ascend into a demon lord. Lynn and Rihaya run out of mana, leaving Abel no choice but to confront the demon prince alone. He is quickly overwhelmed in the duel, but just as Rihaya cries out for help, Rio appears and saves him. Abel is stunned when Rio casually labels the demon prince as weak, declaring he'll finish it off quickly so everyone can go home. With that, Rio wipes out the remaining devils and prepares to face the demon prince head-on. Earlier, Natalie races through Lune to find Rio and finally catches him in the library. Breathless, she explains that Abel and the others have vanished and begs for his help. When Rio asks why she came to him, she simply answers that Abel told her to. Without hesitation, Rio heads straight for the dungeon, ignoring the guard's warning that it is officially closed. Since he can't figure out the proper route, he simply carves his own path from the first floor all the way down to floor 40. Back in the present, Rio steps forward and challenges the demon prince to a duel. With a single strike he cuts off its head, but the demon prince reattaches it immediately. Unimpressed, Rio slices the creature into pieces using high-pressure water jets, killing it instantly. Abel and the others thank him sincerely for saving them, and Rio casually demands Abel treat him to dinner afterward. Looking over the battlefield, Rio learns that these monsters are devils, and he begins wondering about the difference between devils and Leonore, who had called herself an Akuma. Abel suggests collecting the magic stones and sharing the profits with the families of the fallen. The devil's stones turn out pitch black, showing great age. Harold mentions rumors that devils possess space-time magic, and Rio notes he spotted something unusual while descending through the dungeon. Elsewhere, a so-called hero party summons Leonore and addresses her as a demon lord. She is eager for combat, but the hero Roman is far weaker than she expected. She easily defeats him, steals the sacred jewel, and remarks that while they could defeat the current demon lord, they would never stand a chance against her. Roman is angered by her claim that Rio is far stronger than him. Meanwhile, Rio shows Harold a damaged crystal that appears to have powered some unknown spell. Outside, Hugh and the others celebrate Abel's safe return. Hugh scolds Rio for entering the dungeon illegally, but Harold defends him as the one who saved everyone. Harold also reveals Rio's frightening abilities to Hugh. Both agree that if news of Rio's power spreads, the nobility would inevitably try to control him, possibly making him their enemy. So Harold decides not to include Rio's involvement in any official reports, and Hugh agrees. Later, while jogging, Rio smells curry and follows the scent to a small stall, where he finds Sarah already eating. After the meal, he asks why he has never seen her at the guild if she is an adventurer. Sarah explains she works for Margrave Lune as a sword instructor, then invites him to duel her. During the duel, Rio can only defend as she overwhelms him. Though he loses, she is astonished that he is the strongest swordsman she has ever fought. She asks him about the fairy king who gifted him his robe, explaining that elves are half fairies and even to them the fairy king is a legendary figure. Before leaving, Sarah tells her maid to escort Rio, calling him her special person. Right after that, Rio runs into Hugh, who is heading toward the guild. Because Rio technically trespassed in the dungeon while it was officially closed, Hugh punishes him with an important quest, escorting merchants to Winash. Nils explains that his hometown, Abel, has posted a quest about goblins and undead skeletons attacking the village, and he asks Rio to help. Since the Winash escort job is still a few days away, Hugh allows Rio to go but warns him that multiple parties have already failed, partly because the villagers refuse to let outsiders fight near sacred areas. Hugh adds that even an E-rank party returned badly injured. With that, Rio and the others leave for Abel. Upon arrival, Nils reunites with Mayor Bulin, who is relieved to see him again. When Nils asks about the quest, Bulin explains that the village is under attack from both directions, goblins on one side and skeletons on the other. They also learn that previous adventurers tried to fight the skeletons in the sacred area and were driven out. Before anything can be done, Nils says they need permission from the village council. Everyone heads to Nils' home, where they meet his siblings. They reveal that after their parents died, Nils became an adventurer to support them. Later, Nils returns with the council's permission and explains the plan. They will eliminate the goblins first, then handle the skeletons. He also tells them the village is protected by a guardian beast living near a shrine deep in the woods. The next day, Bulin leads them to the spot where he saw goblins. Rio soon notices a group of goblins approaching. They decide to kill all but one so they can track the survivor back to its nest. Following the trail, they discover the hideout, and during the attack, a goblin general appears. But with Rio's help, they defeat it easily. With the goblin nest destroyed, they return to the village. Afterwards, the village elder, Nasu, takes them to the shrine in the woods. Ito notices a pendant on Nasu's staff and explains that Abel worships one of the 6 forgotten goddesses, the Earth Mother. She also admits that she does not need incantation to magic. At the shrine, Rio meets the guardian beast, a Fenrir named Nkuzin. Everyone is surprised because it is first time when the beast tells its name to anyone. Since Fenrir are relatives of fairies, Nkuzin immediately warms to Rio, recognizing him as a student of the Fairy King. Nkuzin reveals that the skeletons are guardians of an arch-skeleton he sealed inside the shrine. Ito destroys the skeletons outside, and when they open the shrine door, the arch-skeleton emerges. With Rio's aid, they manage to destroy it. Inside, they find a statue of the Earth Mother holding a broken crystal. Nasu realizes the crystal once protected Abel, but when it shattered, the shrine began turning into a mini-dungeon that spawned skeletons. She seals the entrance with magic to prevent further monsters from appearing. With the crisis resolved, Nils, Ito, and Amon decide to buy a house together and invite Rio to live with them, though Rio remains uncertain. Back in Lune, Hugh asks Abel to represent him at a festival in Winash. Elsewhere, an Imperial commander and her subordinate also head toward Winash under the Emperor's orders. Rio sets out for Winash, as do Nils, Ito, and Amon, who are on the same quest after naming their party Room 10. After safely delivering the merchant to Winash, they have 9 full days to enjoy the festival until the merchant's return trip. Upon arriving, Rio and the others immediately begin exploring street food stalls and the various festival attractions. The next day, the Imperial commander's subordinate, Oscar Luska, reaches Winash as well. He quietly suspects that the Emperor sent his commander, Princess Fiona, here simply to keep her away from political affairs, especially his ongoing assassinations of nobles who oppose him. During a party, Fiona feels uncomfortable and chooses to leave early, with her brother Conrad allowing her to rest. Though she resents being sent to Winash, she is relieved that Conrad decided to accompany her. During one of the festival events, Rio and the others spot Abel sitting beside Princess Fiona. Abel's party arrives shortly afterward, and Lynn comments that if Fiona is here, then her infamous subordinate must be here as well. Rihaya confirms this, revealing that Oscar is the Inferno magician, notorious for incinerating 1,000 men and single-handedly defeating a wyvern. Rio and Oscar accidentally come close to bumping into each other, but both instinctively spring back, leaving Oscar suspicious of Rio. Meanwhile, Conrad encounters Abel and gets the odd feeling that he has seen him before. When Abel begins questioning him about Oscar, Conrad excuses himself and leaves. Back at the festival grounds, Rio's friends enter the archery event. Abel joins them, and Rio asks him to show off a little. Abel hits the floating target with ease but is immediately dragged away by the exasperated Rihaya. In Lune, after searching everywhere, Sarah visits the guild only to learn that Rio is not in town. She becomes upset as Rio didn't tell her he would be gone for so long. Aman and Nils participate in a boat race, but Nils ends up brawling with Dan mid-competition. They lose the race but still manage to win the entertainment award, much to the crowd's amusement. Later, the festival unveils the Rain Shooter, a revolutionary new ship powered entirely by wind and water magic rather than sails. Hugh appears briefly at the festival but returns to Lune the same day. Ito purchases a repeating crossbow to improve her combat ability. However, later, Abel attends an evening party on Hugh's behalf and formally meets Princess Fiona. Meanwhile, the windshield devices protecting the party suddenly fail. Saboteurs disable the magical shields and infiltrate the manor with the intent to assassinate Fiona. Oscar spent his childhood peacefully with his parents, helping with daily tasks and using his fire magic while apprenticing under a blacksmith who crafted his first sword when he was about to turn 7. After his first day of hunting, the village spots bandits approaching. With no time to flee, everyone prepares to fight. When the attack begins, the villagers try to defend themselves but are quickly overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. Oscar is hiding with his mother, but the bandit finds them. First, his mother and soon his father, Oscar's parents, are killed by a bandit named Boscona, who also steals his father's sword. The bandits leave, but the bloodshed attracts wolves that finish off the remaining survivors, including Oscar's master, who sacrifices himself to save him. Oscar escapes but falls into a river while running. He is later discovered by another village and taken in by the elder, Luke Rothko, who tells him his red hair is a blessing from the fire god and ensures he receives proper education and sword training. Years later, Boscona attacks again, killing Luke using the same stolen sword. Boscona nearly kills Oscar as well, but the arrival of night saves him. After this, Oscar is seen walking through a forest, his hair having turned white. In the present, Abel meets Winash's lord to discuss starting an adventure training program, with Hugh having promised to supply instructors who have passed the program in Lune. During an attack on their group, Fiona gets Conrad to safety. They assume the attackers have blocked all escape routes, so Conrad urges her to contact Oscar. Fiona manages to send an emergency spell, alerting him. Oscar and the others rush toward her location. Meanwhile, Fiona and Conrad decide to eliminate the attackers themselves. They defeat most of them, but one hidden enemy casts a strong spell, barely giving them time to protect themselves. The attacker begins casting again just as Oscar arrives, witnessing him unleash explosion magic beneath Fiona's feet and sending her over a cliff. Fortunately, Nils, Zito, and Aman are on the beach below and manage to catch her while also dealing with the attackers who follow her down. Oscar arrives immediately afterward. Oscar mistakes Nils, Ito, and Aman for enemies and attacks them, severely injuring all three. Rio steps in and engages Oscar, and Oscar immediately decides to kill him, launching attacks that Rio blocks with ease. They are tackling each other, and their clash intensifies until Abel arrives and tries to explain the misunderstanding. Rio, furious over his injured friends, refuses to listen and even threatens Abel, provoking Oscar further by claiming he will freeze the princess as well. Rio neutralizes Oscar's attacks and asks Abel what he would do if someone harmed Ria. Abel answers that he would let them go if it meant preventing a war. Abel then steps between them, demanding they stop before they escalate the situation into a conflict between their nations. Rio is taken aback when Abel doesn't dodge his incoming strike and finally lets Oscar go. Oscar leaves with Fiona. Later, Abel and Conrad agree it was an unfortunate misunderstanding, though Abel remains disappointed with Rio. Abel also mentions that Oscar apologized for his part in the incident. Fiona rewards Nils, Ito, and Aman for saving her life. Rio decides to return to Lune, where Sarah has been waiting. She quickly recovers from her depression when she finds him in a curry restaurant, and later, after eating, she takes him to the Forbidden Archives to show him the alchemical texts. Rio is surprised to learn about a transcribed spell that allows copying without writing. Sarah promises to demonstrate it to him later. It is revealed that she has free access to the library because of her job and that she is 200 years old, though she becomes flustered when Rio calls her cute. Abel eventually finds them and is surprised that they already know each other. Sarah becomes jealous that Rio speaks casually with Abel yet remains formal with her, so she asks him to address her by her first name as well. Rio then requests that Abel fulfill his promise of treating him to dinner, but when Abel forgets, Rio instead asks for help finding a large house with a garden so he can begin his alchemy experiments. Though he hopes to purchase a noble's property, Restrictions leave him only one option: a farmhouse outside the city walls. He likes it immediately and buys it without hesitation. Meanwhile, in the end, the angel Michael concludes that because Rio and Oscar have already clashed once, they are destined to do so again on a far greater scale. The peaceful life Rio hoped for may not last much longer.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time, take care.